Hello, you're watching Ellie from Ellymentry Papercrafting. I'm an independent Stampin' Up demonstrator here in the UK. I'm making some special cards for my closest friends, and I don't know what to call this card, but it's rather impressive. It opens right out like this, and that's the profile you can see from above, and on the mantelpiece it looks like this. So I got this idea from my dear friend Cindy from Cindy's Stamping Corner when I went to visit her recently. So Cindy makes the smaller size cards that are very popular with Stampin' Up, and particularly in the USA. So they are what we call A6 cards. I'll just grab one to show you the size. So that's this size card. Okay, so that's half the size of this one. But in the UK, we tend to make and send larger cards. So I resized Cindy's project up to my A5 size. So let me show you how I made it. So this time I'm choosing a two-tone effect. And I've taken the Evening Evergreen and the Soft Succulent colours. So to start off with, you need two full-size pieces of cardstock. So these are two pieces of A4, so that's how our cardstock comes. Now, for measuring purposes, I find it better to cut a tiny little strip off for this. So I make this 11.5 inches. It's between 11.5 and 11.75, which is a very silly size. But just to make it easier to score and fold, I cut that off to 11.5. So my first score line is at, let's do it round this way. I take the edge of my cardstock up to 5 3/4 and use the scoring tool to go up and down a couple of times. Now then I take my card out, I turn it over, and then I take this size and I measure it up to 2 7/8 and score back and forward a couple of times. Okay, and then I fold the first one and then the second, so you get this effect. Okay, now I do exactly the same to this second piece of card in the contrasting colour. Fold and burnish exactly the same, but then because these are going to slot together, the one that sticks inside needs to be fractionally smaller from here to here, otherwise these won't fold in nicely. So I cut barely a 1/16 of an inch off of this so that it slides in nicely, and when it sticks down, this part folds over nicely. Okay, so you need to prepare those two cards to begin with. The next thing to do is to stick these together. Okay, so I take my Tombow multi-purpose adhesive and just go all the way over the back of my card. Now do make sure that you do put glue right up to the edges. This is one of those cards that people will pick up and play with, and you don't want it coming apart. So make sure you pop this on, and it's probably the one that will go on in the centre of the mantelpiece, because it really is what they call a mantle pleaser. And that means on over the fire, that means it will get warm. So if you use tape runners or double-sided tape, you might find that the heat dries out the adhesive and it might come apart. So I would always say, a card like this, use the liquid adhesive, because it will be much more inclined to stay put. and then that meets up nicely in the middle. Okay, so that's preparing the card base. The next thing I like to do is get my pieces to go inside. So that's going to fit in the center here on the back panel, like so. And these have come from Eden's Garden. And this was a suite that was out last year. The stamp set and dies are still available in our annual catalogue. And these are beautiful dies, as you can see. And although it's not a Christmas set, I actually think that these designs really do lead themselves towards Christmas. It reminds me of Christmas trees and wreaths. So I think this is a really nice paper to use. Sadly, it has been retired, so I'm afraid we can't purchase it any longer. But if you've got it in your stash, then it's a perfect one to use. But Stampin' Up do lots and lots of 12 by 12 papers, so there are lots of Christmassy ones in there at the moment. But because I've got so many, I decided to make use of what I've got. So that's what you do when you're making cards. Use your stash. So that's nice and firmly stuck on the back there. And a good tip when you're using wet glue, if you use your bone folder like this to go all the way over the piece when you've stuck it down, you're going to spread the glue out underneath and make sure it gets to the corners so that they don't peel off. I don't think there's anything worse than paper that's not stuck down properly and the edges start coming away. So do remember to get your glue right up to the edge. And put a little bit down the center as well, like so. And that's going in there. So that's the inside taken care of. Now to decorate the outside. So I've taken 3 pieces of basic white cardstock, and these all measure 5 1/4 by 2 5/8, and they will fit, if you place them on the front of your card, they will fit in a line like that, leaving 1/8 of an inch border everywhere. So I like to decorate these with more papers, and again these have all come from the same paper pack, Eden's Garden. I'm going to cover the top and bottom in the same one, and then the middle one I'm going to use the darker one. Now I confess here I have made an error. This is facing the wrong way, but I didn't have any more to cut from. I've cut this piece to go underneath, and this is going the right way, but I haven't got another piece of this, so I'm going to have to go with it. And I'm absolutely sure that the person I'm making this for is not going to be worried about that. So I'm just moving that out of the way while I stick these together. And then to pop them onto our cardstock, they're going to go like so. So I find I'm going to put these two on first, and I like to put those on that side. So I find it easier to open my card up like so. Get this butted up flat against my edge. And then I'm going to try and make the same border around the top and side like that. Okay, so I'm going to start by putting my glue on the edge of this and down so far. Okay, I don't know exactly where it's going to be, so if I hold the card here and put glue there, then this should stick down beautifully without glue being anywhere I don't need it. So again, I'm going to use my bone folder to make sure that's stuck down really well. There's a tiny bit of glue there, just take that off with your nail. Okay, so I'm going to repeat that at the other end. And then this bit is going to fit down the center like so, but I'm not going to stick it to this piece. I'm going to pop it on the opposite piece like so. So it's going to go here. Okay, so I can just pop that on there, and again I'm just going to glue it along the side and edges here, and then I'm going to put a piece, some glue just down the center there. And line that up, and then just again use my bone folder to make sure the glue's spread out beautifully. Okay, and then I'm just going to open it out and fit this piece in here. So this now slots in like this. Now we need to finish off the decoration for the front of the card. And to do this, I've taken a piece of the basic white and I've used the die within the stamp set. You've seen this many times. I've used it so much. It's just fabulous. So the die's inside. There's this big outline one. Just come off. That's that outline one. And that's what I've used to cut the white cardstock. And then to cut the gold foil, I've used this one. Okay. I'm going to use the embossing folder. Again, used it so many times. And it's always a good idea to cut this out first and then emboss it. So you can line it up really easily with the pattern. You can see the pattern. It's very, very prominent. So just line all your bits up. Close it carefully, making sure that you hold it down. You can see through where all the bits are going to emboss. Make sure you got it in the right place. And then put it through your die cutting machine. So that embosses absolutely beautifully, like so. And it does bend up, and I just take my bone folder and gently ease it back like so. And then you're going to stick it onto the background. And again, you'll see that it all fits really nicely with that tiny border, and it really makes this pop, and that's going to sit on the front of the card. Also, there's a die in there to cut this piece, which fits beautifully in the center. And I've taken the basic white cardstock for that. So using Evening Evergreen, I'm just going to stamp my sentiment on here. And this is the one that says, thinking of you this festive season. So you don't need to press down hard on this. Just make sure you put a small amount of pressure on, and that the ink, give it time for the ink to transfer to the cardstock. So it's that time rather than pressure. And then just lift it off, and you'll see that it does stamp beautifully. If you have trouble with stamping, probably it's because of the ink you're using. You might not be using dye ink, and that's what you need for stamping because it dries quickly. You also need the proper cardstock. This cardstock, the basic white cardstock from Stampin' Up, has a kind of coating on it, and it just matches the ink, and so you get that lovely crisp stamped image. Okay, if you're not using the right ink, the right cardstock, you might find your stamp isn't clear, and you're not getting a good finish. Okay, now I'm just going to put this on into the center of my foil card, and I find it's always best to use a tape runner or some double-sided tape for this. Using wet glue onto the foil doesn't really give you a good bond. So that's going to go onto here. Okay, and I'm going to use the wet glue for this. Now I find it easier to turn it over so that you can push down on that without catching any edges. And then I tend to put my stamp set over it and put a couple of blocks on to give it some weight. And then I would just leave that for 5 minutes or so. So that's been drying for a little while. We'll make sure that's all stuck down beautifully now and nice and flat. Okay, and then all we need to do is bring our card back in. And that looks gorgeous, doesn't it? Really looking really Christmassy, lovely and bright. And that white behind the gold just makes it really pop. I've just got some little tiny feathery bits around the edge here. So all that I need to do is put some glue on the back of this. And I'm just putting it in the center here, because I only want it to stick here. So pop that down. And I'm just checking before I go down heavily. There's no glue anywhere else. So I'm going to pop that down like so. And I'm just pressing down in the centre part. That's got a good contact now. So this comes in behind these bits, and that's your closure. And I'm just going to finish this off with a couple of these subtle shimmer sequins. Now these came in last year with the Peaceful Cabin suite, but of course everything lasts for so long. I don't want to just discard these. They're still pretty, they're still usable, and they will look beautiful on this project. So I'm just going to use a couple here and there. So if I just put some glue down, tiny little dot of glue, just here and there. I'm trying not to squeeze too hard. I don't want too much glue. And then I'll just lick my finger actually and pick these up. And just drop it down onto the glue. And these are like a matte silver, white, sparkly silver, three different, I think it's, I don't know, 3 or 4 different colours actually. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, that's a 5. There are 5 there, and you need an odd number. So I think that's enough. I don't like things overdone. This is quite a statement in the middle. I think if you put too much on it, it's going to no, it won't look elegant anymore. So then it opens up like so, and now what I do is I like to put some nice paper in my computer, and then because we've got the hex codes now, we can use our computer and put the hex code in for the colour, and I can use the evening evergreen or the soft succulent, the numbers are there, or any other colour I would like to use to type my greeting, my sentiment to the recipient, and it all matches in with the colour. So I would just put that piece in the centre here. Okay, so all the papers can be seen. So I hope you like that, and I'd like to say thank you very much to Cindy for the inspiration. If you'd like to purchase anything from the Stamping Up catalogues, you will see a link to my online store in the description box below, alongside the link to the current downloadable digital catalogues. If you're in the USA, then please purchase from Cindy, from Cindy's Stamping Corner, and you'll also see a link to her online store in the description box below. Thank you all very much for watching today. Bye bye for now.